In this episode, I speak with my dear friend, breakup coach Dorothy. This conversation was a very powerful one, but of course, I do have to mention, first of all, a trigger warning. The episode does contain the graphic details and story of miscarriage and fertility challenges. And if that is not your journey or that is not something that you need in your life right now, that's totally fine. Feel free to skip this one. However, if you are on that journey of navigating difficulties in conceiving, or even just the challenges of wanting something so much in your life, really desiring it, seeing that vision of yourself having it, and it's just not happening, and you're feeling so disheartened and disappointed to the point of heartbreak, then this is the episode for you, and you will find so much value and, I would say, reassurance and a way through in seeing the amazing example that Dorothy shows as she bravely has navigated her own life challenges, so vulnerably shown up in this episode to share her story about what she's been through and how she's navigating it. We don't sugarcoat anything here. We are talking about the realities of life. And we have to talk about the disappointing moments of life and how to move through those, so that for those of you out there who are going through your own version of experiencing the disappointments, experiencing the heartbreak, wanting to manifest, trying so hard to make your dreams happen, this is a space where you can feel normal and you can feel like what you're going through is okay, and you're not the only one, you're not alone. And also, it doesn't mean your dreams aren't necessarily on their way to you too. So while we deal with those realities, we are also shifting into a space of how can we move forward here too in that healthy way, so that you can cope and you can move forward. You're going to love this episode. I hope you do share it if you do resonate with it, and be mindful of that trigger warning, of course. Okay, let's go to the show.
I am so excited to have you back on the show, Dorothy. Welcome. This is your third time on the Anxiety Reset podcast.
I love your podcast and I love you so much. I love being here. Thanks for having me for a third time. How fun.
Oh, it's just always such a pleasure to chat with you. And, for some of our episodes in the past, we've had a bit more of a structure and a bit more of a we know where we're going. This time, I mean, we'll just see what unfolds as always. But I know when you and I get together and we chat, because we're so aligned in so many ways and our viewpoints on the world from our different sides of the world, we are always going to come up with something really, really beautiful to share with everyone. So to start us off, I suppose I'm finding a theme that's coming up in the journeys I'm seeing with my clients. I've seen things in my own life, and it's this idea of when we want something so much in our lives and we're in that process of manifesting a vision and calling in better for our lives, and we get the disappointments along the way. We get the moments where it feels like it's not going to happen or it's not working out. And I find this a really interesting thing to explore, because sometimes I can get caught in it too. And I go into the, it's not going to work out. But then I've started to shift into this story of, well, not yet. It's not over yet. And there's still a story unfolding. You've had a bit of a journey that you've gone through with calling in things that you want in your life. And I guess I'm just opening up the invitation for you to share a little bit about what that's been like for you, and just being in the realness of when it doesn't feel like it's happening, like click my fingers, I just put it on my vision board and here it is.
I'm so excited to talk about this, and you opened it up so well, Georgie. Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of wild, even the way that you just talked about it and opened it up, because I think what's been fascinating is that this journey of everything that's taken place in my life, it's really interesting how it all popped up very quickly and it all went away very quickly. And I find that fascinating now, looking back at it, as you just said that.
Can I just add in
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
one other thing that I just realized about both you and me in our life journeys? Like, it's not that we're not great at manifesting stuff. Like, both of us have had amazing, mind-blowing dreams come true in our lives in various ways. And it's that like, it's not that the magic isn't there. It's not that the ability is there, but sometimes some things just keep being like a carrot dangling in front of you. And it's like, not yet, not yet.
It's so funny. Isn't it crazy? Oh, I love that. So good. So good. Yeah. So I think, I mean, okay, so I'll just start back in 2021. I had my first experience being pregnant. I took a pregnancy test. It came back positive. I was super excited, but also extremely nervous. At that time, I really was just in complete surprise and awe that I was pregnant. Um, I had just gotten a puppy named Tinkerbell. She's a Great Dane. And at that time, I was way in over my head, like unbelievably over my head with this puppy. And up until getting the puppy, I was like, absolutely, I want a baby. I'm so excited to have a baby. I was in this space where it felt right. It was good. And then I got the puppy and I was like, absolutely not. I don't need a baby. I can barely handle this puppy. This is insane. And then that's it when I got pregnant. And then 4 days later, though, I started spotting and I got nervous. I went to the doctor and they had mentioned that it was what did they call it at first? They called it something like a vanishing, what did they call it? I don't remember. Like a false pregnancy. They thought it was a false positive pregnancy test. Like the sperm and the egg met, but it didn't embed in my uterus because they couldn't see it in my uterus. But when they did blood work after the fact, which I wasn't going to do it, I wasn't going to do the blood work, and I'm glad that I did. They realized my HCG levels were too high for a false pregnancy. And so it was an ectopic pregnancy, meaning that the sperm and the egg attached to my fallopian tube. And that experience, I was very upset and sad and devastated. But it was pretty seamless. I was lucky enough to have caught it early. I didn't have to have surgery. They gave me an injection of a cancer-like drug that stops the growth of cells. And then it was done. And they just said, please don't get pregnant within 60 to 90 days of this drug being in your system, because if you do get pregnant, the cells can't grow. So that wasn't a problem. I go on with my life. I get used to having a dog. It's been amazing. It's awesome. I have a great year. I get engaged that was in November of 2021. And then I got engaged the following February to my partner, which was super amazing. And again, these are all I want to mention, these are all on my vision board, right? I even have my vision board up here, over here. So it's like, these are all things on my vision board, all things I'm actively manifesting. And my baby has always been an active manifestation, I think, for my whole life. And I didn't notice that until I got into the coaching realm of, I just always had this strong belief in, I call her baby Marilyn.
She's
she's
real.
already named.
I know. I feel like I see you with her. Like,
I know, right? I already have our pregnancy shoot figured out. She's here already in so many ways. And so it's just so fascinating and funny. But so got engaged in February, again, this big, amazing manifestation come true. It was everything that I wanted it to be. And then the following September, I'm about to go on this month-long trip with my partner. We were going to Italy, Croatia, and Greece, which was amazing and beautiful. Again, another manifestation.
a dream.
So, right.
Romantic trip with a partner.
Oh, it was amazing. Absolutely stunning and gorgeous.
I have the same vision with going to Venice with a partner one day. And that's something I've experienced too. And I remember being there and being like, wow, here's a dream come true. I'm here.
Oh, I love Venice. Venice is one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
So right before we were leaving, I think it was 5 days before we were leaving, this is actually a funny story that I haven't told many people, but I had ordered these CBD joints. They don't sell them in Florida, or if they do, I don't know where, but I ordered these specific CBD joints for my period because I was getting really bad cramping, and I was like, I'll just smoke some CBD joints and we'll see how it goes. Long story short, I get them in the mail that day, and on the package it says like, if you're pregnant, please don't smoke these. And I was like, let me just take a pregnancy test just to make sure, because I don't want to like smoke this if I'm actually pregnant. But I remember grabbing the pregnancy test and being like, oh, I'm just going to be disappointed again. I don't even want to check this. And I go to the bathroom and I pee on the stick, and it was positive. Again, I was so excited, like unbelievably excited that I got this positive pregnancy test. A part of me didn't even believe it was real. But then I was taking one every single day up until the day I was leaving, and the line just kept getting darker and darker. And then finally I took a digital one and it said yes. Long story short though, I'm like anxious, right? About it being an ectopic pregnancy again. So
naturally.
right.
Let's just caveat that for like those who are listening who don't know much about ectopic pregnancies. Like this can be a really serious and excruciatingly painful thing. Just imagine something growing in a tiny fallopian tube in your body. Like this is like, it's a serious thing that you went through and that could have happened too.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And the doctors made sure to like tell me that when I did have it. So all of these like worries were in my head. And I begged multiple doctors' offices to let me come in and see if they could see where it was implanted. But all of them were like, it's too early. There's no way we would be able to see anything. Just while you're over in Europe, make sure that you're like checking for the pains. And like, if you have any pain, go into a hospital, which Europe's health insurance and health, I'm sure that's actually even better than the United States. But I was concerned about being in a different country having an emergency. So we get over to Europe, and the European, I don't know what it is, but I feel like in Europe, sparkling water is like a legit thing. They drink like a lot of sparkling water. Every time you go out to eat, they're like, would you like regular water or sparkling water? I'm like, sparkling, duh, right? It was very not good for me because I would get gas bubbles, and I would be concerned that those gas bubbles were the baby growing in my fallopian tube. It was about to rupture at any moment, and I was going to bleed out and die. So I had to stop drinking the sparkling water because I was like nervous and concerned.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell what was like a gas bubble versus like a pain in my uterus or in my fallopian tube.
You know what? I think that's really smart, Dorothy. Not that we want to like wrap ourselves up in cotton wool in our lives with like anything that could trigger us, but I had a home invasion a few years ago. And one thing that helped me a lot in the recovery after that, at night, if I heard the slightest sound in the house, like a creak, it was just like, you know, sounds that happen, maybe an animal on the roof or something. I wanted to drown out those sounds. So I used to go to sleep playing rain sounds so that it would just create this like white noise to drown out any sounds. And I wasn't just getting that trigger for my nervous system. And now it's not a thing for me anymore. So it sounds like it was almost like a similar thing, like just have the still water and you're not going to unnecessarily trigger your nervous system into that state.
Right. And it was at least until I could get into a doctor and someone could confirm that it was in the uterus. Like, yes. So we do the trip. It's an amazing trip. I think by the time we got to Greece, which would have put me at like 7 weeks, I was feeling good about the pregnancy, meaning I had morning sickness. My partner at the time I do not think, he was just constantly like reiterating, I don't think this is an ectopic pregnancy. I think you're fine. Like everything's okay. You're taken care of. And so it was really good at helping me through that. And by week 7, I felt like I wasn't freaking out about it being an ectopic pregnancy. But then when we got home, I go to the doctor at, I think 8 weeks is as early as you can get in. So I went in as early as I possibly could to the doctor. So I think that was around 8 weeks. And they did the ultrasound, and they couldn't see anything through the regular. So I did a transvaginal ultrasound, and you could see the baby, and she was there, and she had a heartbeat, and she was in the right spot. And it was so awesome, Georgie. It was so cool. Like, I wish I would have recorded it like in a video. I, of course, got like the pictures and everything, but it was so, I mean, life-changing. Like, that moment forever changed my life. And it was fascinating because I was talking to my acupuncturist who specializes in fertility, and one of the big things that I've been talking to her about is like this desperate feeling of wanting and needing a baby, and how strong it is now, because it was never this strong. It was never this strong for me. And I couldn't understand like why now is it just an unbelievable, like it feels ingrained in me, or it feels primal, to be quite honest, this like need and desire to be pregnant. And she said to me, she thinks it's like one of those things where you don't know what you're missing when you haven't had it, and then once you get a taste of it, you don't want to live without it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that is the full-on experience that I'm having. And I only say that, and I know I'm sure there's plenty of people who haven't been pregnant who want it in that primal way as well. Not saying that one is good or bad or right or wrong, but that's just been my experience of experiencing and seeing that heartbeat, having something grow inside of me and noticing my body change. I want that more than I want anything else in my entire life, which
I was just gonna, sorry, I just wanted to add in there how I see this, Dorothy, is like, we are designed for expansion and growth. And once we've expanded into a new potential, and we've expanded into a new version of ourselves and a new sense of what is possible for us and what's available to us, like, to shrink back feels, it's unnatural, it's not comfortable, it's not where we want to be. So in that context, like, I fully can understand what you're describing here.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. That's exactly how it feels, is like a shrinking back or a dimming down. I almost feel like my light has been dimmed.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'll get us through the rest of the story, and then I'll tell you kind of what happens afterwards. But so after that 8-week point, and I get to see her, and I'm so excited. I knew she was a girl, but I did do like an early test to figure out if she was a girl, and she was. I did so the next kind of point was to do your blood work. At 10 weeks, you do blood work to test for different, I want to say problems, but there's probably a better way to put that, but they check for a number of, I don't know if you call them diseases or chromosomal disorders or something. And so going into that, I wasn't scared of that at all. I was totally like on board. I didn't think anything of it. When I got my results back, they said that it came back positive for something called triploidy, which is when there's 2 chromosomes in one egg and it didn't split and make twins. So that means the baby has 3 sets of chromosomes, which would make it not able to survive. And at that time when she told me that, I love data analytics. So I went immediately to the actual test and started reading through the stats. And what I found is that most companies will not test for that because it's so inaccurate. And when I looked at the rate of success, meaning, how many times does it come back positive, that it's actually positive? And it was only 5%. So only 5% of the positives were actually ever positive. And from that point, I was like, this is not true. Like, there's no way. I do not believe that this is an issue. But then they wanted to do all this additional testing. And I said, absolutely not. Like, we will do additional testing after my 12-week appointment, and you guys can do another ultrasound, make sure everything's okay. And then I'll do additional testing if we need to. And so we did the ultrasound at the 12-week appointment, or I guess it was 13 weeks. I was like a week behind. And when I went to that appointment, the ultrasound, she measured only 8 weeks. So she was smaller than what she was at the first measurement. And then there was no heartbeat. So then that confirmed that most likely there was something going on with the triploidy. And yeah, that was like that part was devastating in itself. But I feel like the aftermath of it was worse, if that makes sense. So knowing that she was no longer alive was one thing. Like it was experiencing that. But I think the part that was harder was when she actually left my body. So my body was holding on to the baby naturally. Like she probably died around 9 or 10 weeks, and my body wouldn't let her go. So the midwives, I was seeing midwives, they suggested a DNC. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So when they suggested the DNC, I go to the doctor, and the doctor said, if she's measuring 8 weeks, we might be able to do this more like naturally, and you can do it with the pills at home if that's something that you want to do or try. And I said, sure, let's try that. So then I go home, and you can take these pills that it's kind of interesting. Can I just be like really honest? And this might be something you might want to put in your description of like a trigger warning or something, but this part is really important to me to share because I wish that someone would have shared this information with me before I experienced it. And I hope no one listening experiences this, but if you do, I want you to know this because I wanted to know this. But my doctor called this cramping and bleeding. She said, you're going to go home, you're going to take these pills, and you're going to cramp and you're going to bleed. And I remember asking her, how do I know if it's different than a period? And all she said was, you will know. If I could rewind and have her tell me something else, I wish she would have said, you're going to take these pills. They will induce you into labor. You will not experience labor to the point of having a physical baby because you're not far enough along for that, but you will birth the remnants that is inside of you will all come out, and you will be birthing your child at home with induced labor. And I feel like if she would have told me that, I think I would have done it in a more like ceremonial way, maybe. Whereas naively, my partner and I were like, let's get a movie, we'll get some snacks, we'll get dinner. I shouldn't have eaten before. That's like a whole thing. But I thought I was going to be sitting on the couch bleeding in like a diaper, but it was way more extreme than that. And I wish I wouldn't have been sitting on the toilet, because when you're sitting on the toilet, it all comes out into the toilet. And I don't know, like in my mind, I'm almost like I'm freaking out. I'm a little bit embarrassed. My partner's trying to be there to console me, but I'm feeling like everything just fell out of me. Everything just left. Like you see the placenta, you see everything. And I like flushed her down the toilet. And I think like, if I could redo any of that, like I wouldn't have done it in the toilet. I would have sat in the bathtub. I would have let it come out in the bathtub. I would have scooped up her remnants and like had that for like a ceremony, like a funeral.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting with miscarriages, at least early miscarriages. It might be different with miscarriages that happen after a certain point. I know there are funerals for baby who are stillborn or things like that. But early miscarriages, there's no like funeral or like ceremony or acknowledgement that it happened. And it's a weird feeling of the world just continues on without you. And like I couldn't even function. So it was like one thing to know it intellectually, but still have her in my body. I felt okay. Like I felt, wow, I'm handling this really well. But then as soon as she left my body, I lost it. Like I lost it. And the whole month of November, because that happened early November, the whole month of November, I was bleeding. And I was wearing diapers while trying to get back to going to the gym, trying to work, trying to like keep up with the world. And I remember reading something and someone said you should spend 5 days in bed, 5 days like one step away from the bed, and 5 days within walking distance of your bed or something. And I was like, that's insane. I'm not going to spend 15 days like dilly-dallying about that. Like, absolutely not. And I should have. Um, and so that whole month I'm bleeding. And then by week 3 or 4 of bleeding at these like excessive amounts, I remember trying to contact the doctor, being like, I think something's wrong. I kept trying to tell people around me, I think something's wrong. And they were like, it's fine, it's normal, it's not a problem. And then early December, I woke up and I was like sopping wet in blood. I just like woke up completely sopping wet in blood. I like felt things physically fall out of me. I stood up, I went to the bathroom, I took the diaper off, I like cleaned up, I showered, I put my diaper back on, got back in bed for 45 minutes. And again, I was like sopping wet in blood. So at that point, I call the doctor and they're like, you have your 2:00 appointment today. You can come in at 2:00, or we suggest if like you're really concerned, you should go to the ER. I really didn't want to go to the ER. I was already like $10,000 in debt from just like the miscarriage alone and like all the other things. So I didn't want to like pay for the ER visit. Long story short, I get to the 2:00 appointment and my doctor, I described what happened and I had taken photos, and my doctor was just like, we have to get you into surgery soon. He was calm. He was so cool. He was just super calm. And like, but he's like, we need to get into surgery and it's soon. And it's a Friday afternoon. So I'm like, okay, so like Monday or Tuesday. And he's like, no, today, like right now we need to send you up to the ER and like, we need to do surgery. Or I don't know if he sent me to the ER, but he sent me somewhere to have surgery. So then later that day, they checked my blood levels. They did surgery actually Saturday morning instead of that night. And that was a whole other experience. I had lost a lot of blood during surgery, so they had to do blood transfusions. And then the recovery from that was extremely difficult as well. I had never lost blood in that capacity before. And so I remember like 2 or 3 days later, I tried to get up and take my dog to the dog park, and I couldn't get in I even drove there, which I normally walk there, but I drove there, and that was still, it took way too much out of me, and I could barely like stand. It was not fun. And it was just a complete, it was a complete fallout after that of things feeling like I just felt lost. I don't really know how else to put it other than that the world keeps on moving and you're like, why? Why is everyone moving on as if nothing happened? And that was really hard. I personally didn't feel like I didn't, and I think it goes to what we were talking about before, is it just like, it felt like everything else in my life was so minuscule in comparison to her. So if I couldn't have her, and if I couldn't work towards having her, like trying again, which was not an option for me and my partner, I didn't see the point of life anymore. It was really hard.
Dorothy, you work with women and you call them brave hearts. And the story you just shared, I can't think of a more brave heart example to be open with this vulnerability, this deep desire in your heart, and the loss that you've experienced. What I'm hearing is, I suppose, something that, regardless of our exact experience of it, it's this strange thing that we get with life, and it's this truth that we all see when we go through a huge loss like this, like grief, that the world just keeps turning. Our world does not make space for loss. We don't have the ceremonies for it. I mean, funerals are there, but only for specific circumstances. And even then, even when it's a funeral, like we kind of know what to do in a funeral for an older person who's reached the end of their life, like the traditional happy ending. This is someone's like lived story and life is over. But then we have funerals for young people and or children, and people are just like at a loss as to how to be and what to do. And a funeral for a life that was, not even begun in so many ways. We don't know what to do with it. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to talk about it. So for you even bringing this conversation to light, I know so many people are going to listen and feel so validated that you did.
Yeah, I'm so honored to be able to share it with you and for you inviting me to share it. It's funny too, because, and I know everyone is so different, but a lot of the books that I've read, a lot of the things that I hear, but just many people would be like, I know you don't want to talk about it. So, but I'm just know that I'm here. And it's interesting because I'm like, no, all I want to do is talk about it. And especially back then, now I feel like more calm about it. I feel a lot different now, but back then I was like, all I want to do is talk about it. That was my whole world. My entire life is gone. So if you want to talk to me, all I want to do is talk about this.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that funny? Like we don't know what to do for people, but actually, if we just create a space to listen and have these stories be told and heard in a safe space, and just be there with someone while they say, like, my heart is broken, my life has fallen apart, the thing that I wanted the most in the world that made life feel worth living is gone. Like, I had it and it's gone. If we can just sit with someone through that, that is so healing. Like, it's sounding like that's what actually you needed in that moment.
yeah, well, it's fascinating. One of the thoughts that was really prominent then that I didn't know was, I wasn't like aware of it yet. When I was pregnant, I think what was really, it was just, that experience is so good. It feels like a drug to me at this point. When I was pregnant, I felt like my life meant something. Like I mattered. I was here. It's so clear why you're here on this world and you're growing another human being. And it was just an unbelievable experience that when it was gone, my brain internalized that and made it mean I don't matter, which then you can, like, that of course spirals into what I experienced was a lot of suicidal ideation, because it just felt so, my world just felt apathetic. I felt like I didn't matter, worthless, maybe is like the feeling. And especially when your body is integrated in that, of what happened in my body. And I don't feel like I took a lot of blame for it. I think that can happen. I know a friend who, oh my gosh, and I can't really speak too much to her journey, but she gave birth to a child at like week 22 or 24, and it was a cervix thing, and they called it an incompetent cervix. And it makes me so mad because of course then she took that and internalized it of like my body failed me, which is absolute utter bullshit. And it makes me so mad that if someone said that to me, I'd be like, we're not using that word. That word is to not be repeated around me. And that is such,
like, what's
so
the connotation of the word incompetent? Not worthy, not enough.
right? And it's absolutely insane. So dumb.
It's like geriatric pregnancy is what they call you. I think if you're over 30 and you have like what?
Right?
They might have moved it to 35 now, but they call you geriatric pregnant, which is like, what? Like, can we not find a better word for this?
Absolutely insane. So dumb. But yeah, so I think like my prominent thoughts and feelings were I no longer mattered. What am I doing on this planet? What am I here for at this point? And I kept feeling like if I could try again, because immediately when we were told in the ultrasound, we weren't even told, just when we realized she didn't have a heartbeat, the ultrasound tech couldn't tell us that she wasn't alive. She had to bring a doctor in. But I remember turning to my partner and being like, can we try again immediately? Like, can we try again like now? And because we couldn't try again immediately, I think it just felt like the goalpost was moved, or like the outcome that I wanted, the manifestation that I thought was like here already was gone. It's such a weird feeling going from I'm having a baby in 6 months to, I don't know when I'm going to have a baby now. And I'm all the way to the point. I'm now 33. This happened when I was 32. I'm 33 now, and I'm about to like freeze my eggs. And I'm like, what? How did we get here? Like, I was about to have a baby, and now we're all the way here and I'm freezing my eggs. It's like such a weird, going back to like your original statement of we want something, and then we keep hitting these like weird disappointments of like, is it going to happen? Or, it keeps getting further and further out. It's like the discouragement of that.
It's like, I think for women, especially just seeing the world and navigating it as a woman, we tend to have some pretty like clear desires in common. Obviously, there are variations in this, but either we like deeply desire to be a mother, and that experience of this like raising a child and creating life, and that can be a huge impetus. I think we can have that. We can also have this deep desire for like sacred union, a lover, the one, that lifelong partnership and love. We can have, and a marriage potentially that might look like. We can also have a deep desire for a purpose in our career, or a business or a dream coming to life in that regard. And in all those scenarios, I mean, I can't think of a other major one other than those three kind of, and sometimes they overlap. Sometimes we want all three.
Right.
Have another major one. Am I missing one, Dorothy, that you can think of other than like mother, lover, like business,
Career
career,
purpose.
yeah, purpose?
Yeah. And I feel like those are three really good ones. I
Maybe
mean, I
health.
obviously deal with the first two. Yeah. Health, right? Mm-hmm.
Health might be the other one, like optimum health, well-being, body, those kind of things.
Travel, adventure, exploration, maybe for those.
Yeah. But I think there's nothing that calls to our heart the way that like purpose, love, motherhood may. And I'm not saying motherhood calls to everyone either as well, because like I just really want to speak to those women as well who are like, I actually don't feel that call, but they will feel a call to something, and we all can relate to that. And I think I really noticed in that journey, the way you described, falling pregnant and feeling like it's here, such a similarity in that journey of falling in love and thinking you found the one. And I mean, I've had that experience in my life of literally, I met the love of my life, was the story I was telling at the time. And it felt so real and it felt so true. And I was, oh my God, all my manifestations are real. And here we are in Venice and like living all these things that I just dreamed about. And I used to imagine his arms wrapped around me, and here they are wrapped around me. Wow. My mind blown all the time. And then poof, it was gone. And it's like the world came crashing down and the heart breaks, and it just feels like this devastation and this sense of just what you described, like, what's the point? Nothing matters. I don't matter. And I'm wondering, I suppose, the path through that. Obviously, you guide women to healing their hearts and building back, mending that broken heart. I feel that a real crucial piece perhaps missing in our society, in our dialogue around this, is just honoring the death, honoring the loss, honoring and seeing it and saying, your world has shattered, your life has died as you know it. And maybe having some kind of ceremony around that is something that we're missing. We're missing ceremony and ritual in so many ways in our lives, I think, as human beings in our modern era. Like, it's just get on with it. Come on, just go back to normal. Just pave over it. Let's just pretend like that's the toxic positivity, just mindset, and like you'll be fine, when we really have to honor like our heart, the hole that's left in the heart. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. What's kind of interesting that we're talking about ceremony and ritual, because inside of my program with my clients, a funeral for your breakup and for your ex is a part of that process.
I didn't know.
And so isn't that crazy? So it's been a part of the process for a long time now. And so coming through the miscarriage, I started trying to look at the parallel that you just exampled so well, between heartbreak, getting over an ex, and miscarriage, because I was being told there's so many things out in miscarriage about you're never going to get over it. And that can be like really helpful and healing for some people. For me, who teaches people how to get over an ex, it wasn't helpful. So I started trying to find ways that I could adapt my own programming and teachings and apply it to this thing here. So one of the ways that I held a funeral, I think before I even talk about the tangible things, I think one of my biggest takeaways was I really had to show up for myself because no one else was. And no one else was stopping their life. And no, it didn't matter as much to anyone else as it was going to matter to me. And instead of being upset and angry about that, just holding myself in that and being like, girl, it matters to you. And that is all that matters. And you have got to be there for you and for her because she's still fucking here. Like, I think that was the crazy part for me is, a lot of times someone will name the baby before the baby arrives and then they won't use that name again. Granted, for me, I'm like, it's a soul level thing. I'm pretty sure Marilyn's soul is still here with me. Marilyn will still be a thing. And I just had to be there and show up for myself because no one else was going to show up the way that I needed them to, because who else is going to do it better than me?
And she needs you to show up for you.
Right?
She's
Yeah.
like, you got to upload to me.
Exactly. And so I did actually buy a lemon tree. And so there's kind of like a whole lemon tree situation. It's laughable now, but it was very real before. When the miscarriage actually first just happened, I don't remember why I did this, but I went to a Walmart with my cousin Jill, and she was talking about honoring the baby that had passed and how she's seen others do this. And so she talked about a tree. So I'm at the Walmart and we buy this lemon tree and I bring it home and it just kind of sat in the container. It comes in like this plastic container. It sat in this container for a really long time and I didn't touch it. I didn't do anything with it. I moved it from room to room once in a while. So it was like out of sight because it was getting triggering from time to time, especially because I hadn't even gone through everything that I kind of talked to you about yet. So as different moments happened, there was one moment that I got really upset where I had gotten the bill from the hospital for everything. And I was like, I'm going to be paying this for like years at this point to not have a baby. And I was so mad about it. I was like, this is what it costs to not have a child. And I remember taking the lemon tree, I'm taking it outside and I grabbed an axe and I was like, I'm just going to chop it into a million pieces because I hate this thing so much. And I eventually didn't do that, but the lemon tree made it. And when I got to a place,
I love that you almost killed your lemon tree.
I know, it was absolutely insane. We've gone through a lot of emotions here, Georgie. So
yeah, but this is also all the phases of like the goddess as well. Like there's your Kali that just wants to destroy and like cut ties. Like, but that's I see that as like a cutting of an attachment too. Like,
yeah,
like which is a powerful process of the healing. But
yeah, exactly. So anyways, I finally got this lemon tree. It survived. It's here. And I went ahead and I took it and I planted it in the front of my house outside underneath this like archway that I have. And I planted it and did like a little ceremony then just by myself and with my partner. And then every day I water it. So I get to see her every single day. I experience that every single day. I'm reminded of her every single day. And I'm not going to lie, like some days I'm like mad and angry. Some days I'm sad and I'm disappointed she's not here physically. And then some days I'm really happy and like grateful that I got that experience. So it just changes from day to day. But it is something that I get to experience every day, which is also I think a part of my healing also has been finding all the ways that I'm already a mother and celebrating all the things that I was so excited to celebrate with her, of her first Christmas, her first birthday, and her going to school. Like, I saw so many things in like my mental imagination the moment I found out I was pregnant. So I started celebrating those things. And so on Tinkerbell's birthday, we did like a second birthday party, and I did it as if it was Marilyn's birthday party. And just figuring out different ways that I'm a mom and showing up like a mom, even though I don't have a human child, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I so hear you in that. And you know, what's interesting in my journey, with motherhood, like, I wasn't like you. You've wanted Marilyn like your whole life, and like had this real like connection all through your 20s. Like, whereas I was a bit like I love my freedom and it sort of got to then this point around my 30s of like turning 30, around like, oh, like people are actually wanting babies now, and like coming to terms with that in myself and working through my own inner blockages around that, which really, when I came into it, was about, I saw an element of motherhood being like a restriction and a limitation because I thought I had to do it a certain way. And as soon as I opened up to this idea of, okay, I can actually do this my way and have the freedom embedded and around it, that was a real opener for me. And I've been working in the same way of like how I've never felt more of a mother. It's so strange. And yet, you know, I have my first son. I have my clients that I mother all the time, as I'm sure you feel a bit like that too. I tend to the nature around me in my garden and my home as though like I'm a mother, I'm a nurturer of so much in my life. And it's wonderful how, even if we're not in the tangible moment right now, and we were talking about being on the edge of delusion with this stuff, but I think it's smart. I think it's so smart to be in delusion of this crazy reality where we're so deluded anyway. Like, I think our whole system of society is such a delusion, like in so many ways, which is a discussion we can get into, but there are so many ways we can experience what we want to experience, whether it's here or not, in the physical form. And in that, I find hope.
Yes, right. And it's kind of funny because I would go back to moments. I've said this before to other people, but I've talked a lot about, when it comes to baby Marilyn, I'm not above any of the hows. And I've said that time and time and time again. The closer I got through pregnancy, the more attached I was to the how. I read books. I got excited about a specific birth plan. I noticed the attachment grow. I mean, retrospectively, like as I'm looking back, I see it. I didn't see it in the moment. I noticed the attachment grow. And so I think there's a lot of lessons that have happened for me throughout this process, but one of them was really coming back to my primary teaching around attachment and non-attachment. And when it comes to manifestation in general, the less attached you are, the easier this thing is going to form in a way that's like better than you could ever even imagine. So I was extremely attached to the how, and I keep coming back to, I said I was not above any of the hows. So like being open to the timing around the hows, being open to just all of it in a way. I mean, we even talked about this before we started recording, but like the turbulence, I don't pay attention to the turbulence part anymore. Kind of like you were talking about with your airplane analogy. I'm very much more focused around, I spend more time in an alternative reality where baby Marilyn's here. I'm with my dog Tinkerbell, and we are in the backyard and we are rolling around in the grass. We are gardening. And I spend more time in that environment, even physically with Tinkerbell, but also in an alternative reality that isn't even here yet. And I spend more time there rather than trying to figure out the how anymore. Yeah. Because then when I'm doing that, I'm experiencing it, I'm feeling it, and it's just as good as if it was here in this physical form. Do you know what I mean?
I absolutely know what you mean. And I think it doesn't mean that you neglect your current reality. It doesn't mean that you just like don't take care of your body and feed yourself and like, nurture the relationships and the responsibilities in your life. It doesn't mean any of that, which I think people can sometimes think like it's just escapism and you're just running away from your life. It's not necessarily like that. It's being so committed to where you're going that it doesn't seem possible that there's any other reality available to you. It's like there's no other destination for me. That's what's happening, because we
Right.
get so convinced of the worst case scenarios going wrong to the point where we are living in that delusion, to the point where we're
Right.
convinced that we're going to get sick, or we're going to never find love, or that we'll never be a parent, like whatever it might be, right? We get convinced to the point of delusion of our worst case scenarios. So why wouldn't we do the same level? You are just going the same level of commitment into your best case scenario.
Yeah. Because it feels better. You guys, at the end of the day, it feels better. That's another thing I love. I mean, I could talk all day about delusion because we're all delusional. We're all delusional already. So you're either delusionally happy and excited or you're delusionally miserable. So you just get to pick your flavor.
Yeah. And here's where I go with that. I'm like, okay, even if life ends, in a week, or I get into my 90s and none of the things I'm hopeful for ever come to fruition. Like, let's just go there for a second, that the reality, the tangible, feel it, taste it, sense it, touch it, never actually is in my experience. If I'm living in hope every single day and I'm smiling and I'm dancing through my life and I'm joyful and I'm expecting good things to happen to me more of the time than I'm in the expectation of bad, well, damn it, that's a life I'd rather live, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to talk to, I love what you just said. It's so important. And I just want to, I don't know if anyone's listening to this who's actually just had a miscarriage or has experienced this like recently in their life. But if it's something that's recent and you're still in like the grieving process, what we're talking about right now might feel difficult. And I don't want you to think that there's anything wrong with you if you can't get there right now. And if you are in that delusionally messy, icky, heavy, horrible place, do not think that there's anything wrong with you. That is like a normal and natural process and a part of that experience, and it hurts and it's so hard. And I have so much empathy for those of you who might be right there right now. But just know that you're not alone, and it's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. I promise you. But that spot can feel so heavy and so thick and so difficult. So don't take what we're saying and be like, oh my gosh, why am I not there? Like, why can't I just do that? There's nothing wrong with you. It's a process, and let yourself be there right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Honoring the pain and what's here and that breaking of the heart.
What would you say? I mean, I have my own thoughts about this, and I'm sure we probably talked about it on other episodes with you, but what are for someone who's in that, like in the thick of the broken heart spot, what do you say to them, or like what advice would you give them in that kind of the thick moments?
It's probably one of my favorite things to talk about in many ways, because I think it's so important that firstly, we look it straight in the eye and we say, this happens. Life can feel devastating sometimes. And sometimes we do have thoughts of maybe it'd be easier not to live this life. And that's not always about that we don't want to keep living. It's often about, I don't want to live this life. Like, this life has become not what I want anymore. And if we can allow that shedding and that falling away and see it as like a cleansing, and see it as devastating as it feels, and like, yes, it's so painful, but it is like nature bringing in an earthquake or a flood. Like, this is part of if we can accept the naturalness of it, like that this is like a way of life and a clearing process. And it's just that our typical stories and our fantasies of what a successful life looks like do not include these moments enough. So then we think there's something wrong with us. So if we take the wrongness out of it and we say, this is incredibly painful, but it's not wrong, we can start to find an ease through it. I see our heart break And I mean heartbreak in all the facets of loss, like anything we can lose in our lives, as like this big open wound full of this poisonous pus. I think I've even talked about this with you before, but never can like be spoken about enough. That's how icky and disgusting the pain feels. But if we when we cry and we grieve it and we spend some moments tending to that wound, there's a moment of relief where that poison has been like, we've picked the pus out, like the pus is cleared for a moment, for a day, for a week maybe, and it slowly will build up again, and then we got to tend to it again, and it will heal to an extent. We get better at tending to that wound. But if we can start to, I guess, see it as like, this is a part of me that sometimes feels really devastated, sometimes feels really sad, and it's not wrong. We don't reject it. We accept it. We love it. It's like evidence of how big that heart is, how hopeful and expanded that heart is, how much love is there. Then I think the burden of it and the story around it becomes easier to hold and accept. I think it's all about just bringing all these parts of our lives and our experience that we don't want to have there, bring them closer to us. How can we own it? How can we feel some kind of like, this is part of my journey? We know all the best stories that we read and TV shows we watch and movies, they wouldn't be so juicy. They wouldn't get you if there wasn't that moment where the character is like on the floor, like, how am I going to get out of this? It's all gone wrong. And I like to sometimes see myself like that. I'm a character in a story, and just as it all looks like it's going wrong, that's the moment before things can start to come back together as well, and we start to see things fall into place. I mean, Dorothy, I even think about that time your account was hacked on Instagram, and it was like, that was horrible for you, right? Like,
yeah, that was insane. Yeah.
that was insane. And
I love the way you talk about it like a cleansing, though. I think that that's a beautiful analogy for any painful heartbreak that happens in your life, is seeing it as a cleansing and a releasing and a reorganizing of your life.
yeah. Yeah. And this opportunity then for parts of you that maybe you've served you for a time but aren't serving you anymore, parts you've grown out of, to grow and mature, and things you can't see, because we can never see it all. The love that I thought I wanted when I was in that last relationship I mentioned, that was like the epitome of my dreams come true at that time, is not the epitome of my dreams come true now. I would not call in the same thing, because of what I now know about love, what I now know about what I need in a relationship, and making it so much more important about, but like making my needs so much more important than they were at that time that I called in that love.
So important.
Which makes me really excited now for what potential lies ahead, given all of this growth and expansion. And I see that for you as like, you know, with your baby Marilyn, and like the kind of mother that you will be for her, given everything that you have experienced, you know, like these are expansive moments as much as they feel so devastating.
And they feel so soul-led. That was one thing. I was doing like journaling this morning, and it was so fascinating looking at, from a soul level, why did I choose this? Like, I do truly believe that we all choose our journeys before we come here, and maybe multiple journeys. But I found it interesting that I chose this. And I think it makes a lot of sense based off of like what I do, why I chose this, and how deep my work is now in comparison to what it was. Like, I thought it was deep before, and now it's like even deeper. And I'm not all the way to the point where I'd say I'm grateful for it yet, but I know like I'll get there at some point.
You know what I think sometimes too, and just the stuff that hasn't worked out in my life, and what that's brought in for me, is that I now see there is so much like beauty and love available in this world, that we have to go through so much pain. Like, I had to shed so much materialism in myself and ego to actually even start to look for it. It creates a sense of just awareness around, like, you have to look for the beauty when you've been through devastation, and you can start to see it more clearly sometimes too. Like, a day of blue sky is so much more beautiful if you've been through 3 weeks of rain. and
Right.
right?
Such a great analogy. I love that so much. Absolutely. That's so good.
And if you're living in a tropical island paradise, which let's be honest, I often am, that's the reality. But like you don't always appreciate that blue sky every day. And so
Mhm.
when we go through these, I suppose it comes back to contrast, right? When we go
Mhm.
through these
Yeah.
things, we see more. And what's beautiful about life is that as much as it can break our hearts and be full of pain and horrible shit that goes wrong, it just as equally surprises us and delights us and brings us things to appreciate and be grateful for and moments that just blow our minds of what's possible.
Yeah.
And I suppose that it's figuring out, like, you obviously swing between the dichotomy of the like, oh my God, devastation and grief to, wow, like, what if it all works out and I'm going to be in my like place of everything being fine and working out. But the more we can kind of be in this neutral zone of it can be devastating and it can all work out, that's where the peace is. That's where that inner
Mhm.
calm is. We can't find it
Yeah.
without swinging around either side at the extremes.
Oh, we just love swinging to the depths of despair, to the epic comebacks. We always end up back at that like calm, confident, middle, at peace, grounded spot. It feels so good. But I don't know if it would feel so good if you didn't swing from deep despair to epic comeback.
Exactly. And this is just life. As much as that is like such an unsatisfying answer, sometimes it's like life is birth and it's death. And it's rebirth
Yeah.
and it's summer and winter and all of the things. And thank God we have our inner voices to guide us to, Dorothy, through all of this.
Inner voice was crazy. Yeah, that was so helpful
Was there
during
anything that you can pick out that your inner voice shared with you going through that was like especially helpful?
There's so much, but I think the two things that are coming to mind right now is that I do just genuinely believe that when when a baby dies before it's born, I do truly believe that sometimes the same soul can come back. And if someone's listening and they haven't read Spirit Babies, I highly recommend the book. I feel like it was super helpful in my healing and in my journey. And then the second thing that I would also say, which is like more of a tangible thing that my inner voice gave me, was that I kept finding that I'd get really angry or annoyed or bitter when people would talk about being pregnant, when I would see pregnancy announcements on Instagram, when I'd hear people complaining about their children, because I'd be like, at least your child's alive, or complaining about when I had this one friend who was like, oh, we're pregnant, but we planned it wrong. So now our birthday is going to be around Christmas. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I like could not even breathe in those moments of just like so angry. Like I would trade you any day. So in moments like that, my inner voice had mentioned, what if you saw it as like you're one person away from your manifestation? Like you're that good at manifesting that you're one person away from your manifestation. And so instead of like getting so upset about it, seeing it as like I'm that much closer to having that myself because people surround me like that, which I can find so much truth in, right? Like the more I just remember starting my business, the more successful business owners I surrounded myself with, the more I adopted their mindsets and their behaviors and that way of life. And the more I was living as that person to create that outcome. So I was like, okay, so the more people I surround myself with who are pregnant, who are having babies, who are family oriented, are amazing mothers, like I want to surround myself with like more of those individuals. And I think immediately following a miscarriage, it's easy for women to feel triggered by every one of those things, which I completely understand and empathize with. So it took me hearing from my inner voice of saying like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a trigger in the way that you're getting triggered.
seeing it as this like energy potential that you're swirling within. It's surrounding you. Look at what's all around you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it points to something really interesting about just being a human, which is that look at how this woman who was complaining about, oh, the birthday doesn't line up. See the limit of her gratitude and ability to feel into her heart of, wow, this is so amazing. I'm pregnant. Like that, just as an example, like you would be in a totally different place with that. Like the depth of love that comes out of you with that experience, like is so much deeper because of what you've been through.
And I've been thinking about that a lot, Georgie, actually, of how much I hear other individuals complain about their children and complain about the things that come along with their children. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure I'll be a parent. I'm not a parent. But I'm sure like when I am a parent, I will have moments like that. And so I'm not diminishing that or like making that a problem. But it's one thing that I'm just noticing and becoming aware of and trying not to complain about Tinkerbell, like my dog, or not to complain about this or not to complain about that, because just as I'm complaining about something with Tinkerbell, someone's like, I would be so grateful that you still have your dog, right? And so, and it makes me hopeful that when I do have children, I will actually see it and feel it a little bit differently and maybe won't diminish moments with them. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. You're making me think about a few weeks ago, my cat like somehow smeared poo all over the laundry, like down the hallway. He smeared it all over the kitchen bench. Like he's never done this before. And it was just this one-off. He must have got it like stuck in his paw or something and he was trying to wipe it off. But like it was smeared entirely all over the house. And look, I had my moment of like, what the hell? But then I just was like, I don't have to react to this. I can just clean it up. Like, I don't have to have the big, like, dramatic response of, this is so terrible. I was just, actually, I kind of found it funny.
Yeah. See, I was telling you about that earlier in our call of like, it's now getting to the point where some of it, not that I can like I'm not laughing it off, but some of these things are starting to get like a little giggly about how the universe played these things out and why they happened in the way that they happened in the order that they happened. It's all just kind of getting to this place where like I can giggle about it. And to me, it's been helpful to like move the energy and have a different energetic experience with the experience itself. So,
well, you step, as much as you've been in the devastation, you step into the other extreme too, which is the joy and the fun and the like, like life is so crazy.
and it's funny you say that too, because I'm like, one of the other things as I'm working on still showing up as a mom, even though I'm not a mom, I'm also indulging in the things that might not be as readily available to me when I am a mom. So sleeping in until 8, sleeping in and like being luxurious about my me time. I still drink alcohol, or I will eat lots of poke and all of these things that might not be as readily available to me, or might just be different experiences when I'm pregnant and have a baby.
Which is just neutralizing your enjoyment and appreciation for the life that you have as it is as well.
Right, exactly.
Such a beautiful place. I'm gonna have to like wrap us up because we've gone like so much over time than I
know. I'm so sorry.
And I've got to let you go to bed. Thank you so much for chatting to me, Dorothy.
Thank you for having me on. This was amazing.
Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your brave heart and sharing that. It is just such a beautiful story. And I know like you sharing that, there is someone, at least one person listening to this whose life you've just changed by hearing it. And, we have to start talking more about when the stuff doesn't go like we don't get the perfect manifestation, because I think that's such a common experience for people. And yet, of course, we still like, how can we still sit in the hope? And I feel like our episode here has just like so clearly demonstrated like the way to move through that, honoring that deep pain, but also then somewhere settling in the middle, and then also laughing at it, and then finding your way through, just being a human. So
that's it. The human experience. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thanks for holding space and inviting me to talk about it.
Dorothy, for those who are interested in your work, who are healing their broken hearts, where can they find you and what have you got going on for these beautiful?
Yeah. So we have the podcast called the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast. So you can find that on Spotify, iTunes. I also love to hang out on Instagram now that my account is no longer hacked. It is at breakup coach Dorothy. You can find me there. And then if you're interested in working with me, you can find all that information at dorothyabjohnson.com/get over your ex.
Beautiful. And we will have all that information in the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. Thank you so much, my gorgeous friend. And I look forward to chatting with you and catching up soon.
Thanks, Boo. I love you.
Thank you for listening. We have reached the end of this episode. If you enjoy this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave me a review and share this episode on your Instagram stories, tagging me at Georgie the Naturopath. You can order a copy of my book, The Anxiety Reset Method, and watch my free masterclass in the links below the episode. That's all for now. Be kind to yourself. Know that you are enough and you're exactly where you need to be.